It was a calm evening, the kind that brings a comforting energy to the house. The sun had set, casting a warm, golden light through the windows, and Anthony had grown up so quickly. It felt like just yesterday he was a boy following me around the house, asking endless questions about life. Now, at 21, he was no longer the little boy I remembered, but a young man, strong, confident, and at times, unknowingly distant. The dynamic between us had shifted as he matured, and it was something I was still getting used to. Dinner was ready, and I called him from the living room. As we sat down at the table, I noticed the way he looked at me different, intense, in a way that made me pause. I brushed it off at first, thinking it was my imagination. We talked about his classes, his friends, and how much he missed home, but the way he spoke, the way his eyes lingered on mine longer than usual, made me feel something I couldn't quite put into words. After dinner, we decided to watch a movie together, something we used to do all the time before he left for college. The living room felt cozier than usual, the dim lighting and soft cushions making it a perfect setting for a quiet night in. I couldn't remember the last time we had such a peaceful evening together. As the movie played, I found myself glancing at him more than I should, noticing the way he had grown into himself. He was no longer the child I had raised, but a man. Then, just as I was beginning to feel a strange sense of unease about the thoughts crossing my mind, he shifted closer to me on the couch. At first, I thought it was innocent, but then his hand brushed against mine. A spark shot through me, something electric, something I knew I shouldn't feel. I pulled my hand away quickly, startled by the intensity of the moment. "What's wrong, Mom?" he asked, his voice soft, almost concerned. I looked at him, my heart racing, unsure of what to say. "Nothing, sweetie, just tired, that's all," I replied, trying to dismiss the feeling and hoping he didn't notice the tension between us. But I knew something had changed in that moment. See that night, as I lay in bed, my mind raced. I knew I couldn't let this feeling grow. I had to keep my distance for both our sakes, but deep down, I wasn't sure how. The next morning, I woke up feeling unsettled. The events of the previous night played over and over in my mind. I tried to shake the feeling, convincing myself that it had all been in my head. I was his mother, nothing more, nothing less. I loved him deeply, but not in a way that could ever be misconstrued. I was being irrational, I told myself, and then he was already up by the time I came downstairs, sitting at the kitchen table with a cup of coffee. He greeted me with a smile as if nothing had happened. Maybe it really had been nothing, just an odd moment that only I had noticed. I decided to push it from my mind, at least for now. "Morning," I said, forcing a smile and trying to sound as normal as possible. "Morning, Mom," he replied, his voice casual and easy. "I was thinking about going for a hike later. Want to join me?" A hike? It had been ages since we'd done anything like that together. I hesitated for a moment, unsure if I should spend more time alone with him after the way I had felt the night before. But then I reminded myself it was just a mother and son spending time together. There was nothing wrong with that. "Sure," I said. "It sounds nice." Later that afternoon, we drove to a nearby trail, a place we had gone many times when he was younger. The air was crisp, the sky a brilliant blue, and for a moment, everything felt normal. We walked side by side, talking about nothing in particular, old memories, his plans for the future, the usual small talk. I found myself laughing, feeling more at ease with him, thinking maybe I had overreacted the night before. But as we walked further along the trail, there were moments where our conversation would pause, leaving a lingering silence that felt heavier than it should. At one point, as we reached a clearing with a beautiful view of the valley below, Anthony stopped walking and turned to me. "You've always been there for me, Mom," he said, his voice soft but serious. "I don't know what I'd do without you." There was something about the way he said it that caught me off guard, of vulnerability in his tone that made my heart ache. I smiled, trying to lighten the mood. "Well, you won't have to worry about that anytime soon." "I'm not going anywhere," I joked. He didn't laugh. Instead, he took a step closer, his eyes locking onto mine. "No, I mean it," he continued. "You've always been more than just my mom. You've been everything." I froze. The words hung in the air, heavy and loaded with meaning. I wasn't ready to face it. I searched his face for some sign that he was just being sentimental, that this was just an innocent moment of affection. But there was something in his eyes, something that made my heart race again, just like the night before. I said, my voice barely above a whisper, "You know how much I love you, right?" "Of course," he replied, stepping even closer. "I love you, too, more than you realize." My pulse quickened. This wasn't how a mother and son were supposed to talk, to look at each other. My mind screamed at me to step back, to put some distance between us, but my body felt frozen in place. "I think we should head back," I said, my voice shaky. "It's getting late." But before I could turn away, he reached out and gently took my hand. The touch was innocent enough, but the way he held on, the way his thumb slowly brushed against my skin, made my stomach twist in a way I couldn't ignore. "Mom," he said softly, his voice filled with something I couldn't quite name. "I don't know how to say this, but I've been feeling something I shouldn't, and I think you felt it too." Panic surged through me. I pulled my hand away, taking a step back, my heart pounding in my chest. "Anthony, stop," I said, my voice trembling. "You don't mean that. You're confused." He looked at me, his expression a mix of confusion and hurt. "I'm not confused, Mom. I know how I feel, and I don't think you can either." Tears welled up in my eyes as I struggled to keep my composure. This wasn't happening. This couldn't be happening. I had to stop this before it went any further, before we crossed a line we could never uncross. "I'm your mother," I said, my voice breaking. "I love you, but not like that. We can't." I couldn't even finish the sentence. The words felt too dangerous, too heavy to speak out loud. And then he took a deep breath, his face clouded with emotion. "I know," he said. "I know it's not right, but I can't help how I feel. And I don't think you can either." Tears streamed down my face as I struggled to keep my composure. "This isn't happening," I whispered. "This can't be happening. I had to stop this before it went any further." "I'm your mother," I said again, my voice breaking. "I love you, but not like that. We can't." The words hung between us, thick and suffocating. I could see the pain in his eyes, the way his shoulders slumped in defeat. He nodded slowly, looking down at the ground as if ashamed. "I'm sorry," he whispered. "I didn't mean to. I didn't want to make you uncomfortable." I swallowed hard, trying to push down the overwhelming mix of emotions swirling inside me. "It's okay," I said softly, though I wasn't sure if it really was. "Let's just go home." The drive home was suffocatingly quiet. Anthony didn't say a word, and neither did I. The weight of what had been said on the trail hung heavily between us, making every passing second feel agonizingly long. I kept my eyes on the road, my mind racing as I tried to process what had just happened. I couldn't believe the words that had come out of his mouth, the feelings he had confessed. It was as though everything I thought I knew about our relationship had been flipped upside down. When we finally pulled into the driveway, Anthony muttered something about going to his room. I didn't stop him as he disappeared up the stairs. I collapsed onto the couch, my body trembling with the emotions I had been holding back since that moment on the trail. I didn't know how to make sense of any of it. He was my son, my baby boy, but he wasn't a boy anymore. It was becoming terrifyingly clear that our relationship had taken on a complexity that neither of us had expected. I wanted to believe that his feelings were just a phase, something fleeting that would pass with time. But the way he had looked at me, the way his hand had lingered on mine, made it hard to ignore. I knew I had to set boundaries, to keep my distance, but the thought of losing the closeness we had always shared was almost trying to find a way
unbearable.
forward. I realized that the line between mother and son had already been blurred. The challenge now was to find a way to repair it, to restore the balance and the trust that had been shaken. But deep down, I knew it wouldn't be easy. The unspoken bond between us had taken on a new, unsettling form, and I wasn't sure if we could ever go back to the way things